Hello guys, welcome back. I hope everyone is doing great. So tonight we're talking about another Amouage fragrance, one that I recently added to my collection, Figment Woman, in this really cute, interesting blue ornate box, which is actually older packaging from the house of Amouage. A lot of the fragrances that I have come in the wider, thinner box with the sleeve. This one is one of the older style packagings where you take off the top and the perfume sits on the base. And this is a really cool purple velvet. And the color of this bottle is really quite gorgeous. It's kind of a reflective gradient of blue into a blue purplish color. And this one is the 100 ml size bottle, and it's Eau de Parfum concentration. And Figment Woman was released in 2017. And the name of the fragrance on this one, which is not the case with some of my other ones, is written along the side of the bottle, and the cap is magnetic. I know some of the older fragrances have caps that are not magnetic, and then with newer bottles of Amouage, the caps became magnetic. And Figment Woman was created by two perfumers. So there are two people that worked on this fragrance, Corinne Vinchon-Spenner and Dorothy Pyatt. And Corinne Vinchon-Spenner is the nose behind quite a few Amouage fragrances, both men and the women's. She's the nose behind Bracken Woman, Lineage Woman, Interlude Woman, which I have a sample of. I haven't smelled the other two. And she also created some of the men's fragrances in the house. I think Overture Man and a few others that I can't recall right now. And so I'm not sure if this fragrance is discontinued. Maybe you guys can tell me in the comments, but I do know that it's still selling at plenty of discounters. And I just purchased this in the last 4 months, I want to say. But maybe I'm wrong, and you guys can correct me if I'm wrong. But anyway, Figment Woman, I purchased as a blind buy. I didn't sample it before buying it, and it's my scent of the day. And when I looked into what this smells like and the note breakdown, I noticed that it didn't get the highest scores, let's say, on Profumo or Fragrantica for that matter. But nonetheless, I sort of like the older fragrances, and I feel really comfortable that a lot of them are my style, although there are a few that are a little weird. I'm still holding on to my sample of Interlude Woman. Once in a while I spray it. It's such an Immortelle heavy fragrance to the point that it's almost cloyingly sweet, and I can't quite put my finger on what's strange about the fragrance, and I can't figure out whether I like it and whether I would actually wear that fragrance, but there's something about it that intrigues me. And Figment Woman I purchased without sampling, and the note breakdown is quite interesting. There's a Szechuan pepper note in here, and there are a lot of florals. There are a lot of white florals. There's gardenia, jasmine sambac, there's orange blossom, there's tuberose, there's ylang ylang, and then there are some base notes that are sort of earthy, and there's iris at the base. So I read the reviews. A lot of people found this to be a strange fragrance, and I'm not sure how popular this one is. I don't hear anyone talk about it. I purchased it. I like to get my nose on different fragrances, especially the older fragrances in the house of Amouage, because I feel like I'm hard-pressed to find niche perfume houses these days that create these complex fragrances that sort of wear like the Amouage fragrances. This one is very interesting. I wore this a few times, and it was my scent of the day today. It's a very interesting fragrance because it changes a lot from the first hour to the second hour to the dry down. And so if there are fragrances that I would say take you on a journey and are complex and are layered and really interesting, this would be one of them. And I find it enjoyable. Is it my favorite Amouage? It's not. It's not my favorite. My favorites are Memoir Woman, Jubilation 25. I like Imitation Woman a lot. This is not my favorite, but it's interesting and I really like it, and I appreciate the perfumery behind this. So no regrets purchasing this. I have nothing like this in my collection. And it's not like it's something that I've smelled before. Like a lot of these fragrances, like Baby Cat has other fragrances like Vana Gloria, and then there's the Rosendo Matu No. 5 that has the same scent profile and so on and so forth, which is fine. Something like this I appreciate because it's different, which is why I'm going down the rabbit hole of vintage fragrances, but that's a whole other conversation. So let's spray it and talk about what this smells like. I did wear it today and I have it on me, but I like to spray it again and smell it as I'm talking about it. So to my nose, this fragrance opens up very spicy, pepper spicy. It has that Szechuan pepper note at the top, and to my nose, it comes through. It's not like a black pepper type of spicy. It's a red pepper, and you almost feel like you can smell the skin of this red pepper that has this sharp heat to it. And it's contrasting these florals, because I do get right from the outset that it's a floral fragrance, but it definitely doesn't come off like a very feminine, girly, soft white floral fragrance, because it has this sharpness from this Szechuan pepper that's contrasting the florals in the opening. And I definitely get the incense, and it's really typical of a lot of the Amouage fragrances. There's that incense that runs through it. It almost comes off a little bit musky, and the fragrance, like some of the other ones, is very opulent and rich. So it's not an airy, delicate, white floral fragrance. It's an opulent, rich, Middle Eastern style fragrance that opens up almost like a darkened, spiced floral fragrance that as it dries down becomes more feminine, and the white florals sort of bloom and come through the fragrance. And of all the florals in this fragrance, I detect hints of the gardenia, and I definitely get hints of the tuberose. They come through, and I get green as the fragrance is drying down. So it's almost as if I'm smelling the stems together with these white florals and this pepper note that is contrasting the florals. It keeps the fragrance from being overly simplistic, and it keeps the fragrance from being a delicate floral fragrance. Although it does get very feminine right after the opening, I feel like it does turn into more of a feminine fragrance after the opening. And when I was wearing this yesterday, I was thinking that the green touches, the green components that come through together with these florals, they almost come off like dying flowers. Like you could smell the flower and the stem of these florals, and these florals are sort of dying or wilting or almost dried out. And it comes off as if the white florals are being contrasted with these notes that are darkening them. So it's not bright and overly floral. It's contrasted really nicely. And I would say that the fragrance is all about contrast. But I do pick up on the gardenia, and I feel like that tuberose comes through. And I keep thinking that the fragrance also has something almost berry-like, something like a dark purple berry component to it that peeks through together with these florals. And there's a note of cassia in here, which in fragrances could come off like cinnamon. And it's such a perfect complement to these florals and this incense that runs through the fragrance. And I feel like even though I said that after the opening this gets more feminine as it dries down, it's still not a delicate white floral fragrance. It just doesn't have that delicate vibe to it. It's like these white florals are being dirtied up with some pepper and some of the cinnamon and some of the incense in such classic Amouage style, where you end up with this very opulent floral fragrance that's very different, and I find it really unique. And then there's something that comes off almost as if there's ambergris in here, and I'm not quite sure what that is. It's not listed as a note in the fragrance. There is patchouli in here. There is papyrus in here that is an earthy sort of note along with the patchouli in the fragrance. The patchouli doesn't come through too much, but there's something in here that almost comes off like an ambergris to my nose. And there's iris at the base. And when this dries down, I feel like the iris really plays its role, because this to me dries down to a powdery fragrance that's a little bit earthy, and it is, like I said, powdery. And I think that iris ends up giving it a cosmetic-like vibe. There's something lipsticky and makeup-like in the fragrance. So it dries down less floral than the way it opens and in the mid portion of the fragrance. And as I'm smelling it right now, I feel like it's a bit of a difficult fragrance to describe, which I think is a good thing. I feel like the notes in the fragrance are very layered, and it's really smooth and round, and it has an opulence about it, and it has a richness without being cloying or too loud. It's actually not a loud fragrance. In terms of sillage and the projection, it's not loud. It's not what people call beast mode fragrance. It's actually quiet on my skin. I think performance-wise, it's kind of average. I do smell it on myself throughout the day, but it's a bit quiet on my skin. But when I do get the wafts of it, it's really lovely coming off the skin. Sometimes fragrances smell so different when you put your nose up to your arm and you have your nose in it, as opposed to the fragrance being experienced off the skin in the air. This one is really nice as I smell it on myself, coming off my skin throughout the day. And like I said, it's not a super delicate white floral fragrance. It's true Amouage style. It's a layered fragrance that's all about contrast. So the white florals are going to be tempered a little in the opening with that pepper. And then you have these earthy notes like the patchouli, the papyrus, and the saffron, and this cassia that's also a spice in the fragrance. So all in all, I like this. I really do. I like this fragrance. And as I'm smelling it on my skin now, this is definitely not the dry down. It does smell like a floral fragrance, but the florals are definitely muted. They're definitely muted florals and really nicely blended with these contrasting notes in here. And like I said, by the time it dries down, the florals are met with those earthy components in the fragrance. And you have that iris that does its magic and leaves a powdery, almost makeup-y vibe to this. So I would say that Figment Woman also doesn't smell like any of the other Amouages in my collection. It's definitely very different, even though some of the others are floral fragrances. This one is different. And the gardenia in here does come through. I'm not sure that any of the other Amouages that I own have gardenia in them. And fragrances that feature gardenia, I usually stay away from. I'm not a big gardenia lover in fragrances, but this one does it right. I get a hint maybe of gardenia, and I like the way the tuberose comes through. And the other florals are just sort of complementing the gardenia and the tuberose, and it's really smooth. But like I said, this is definitely not a fragrance that's all about the white florals. It's about the white florals together with these contrasting notes that really makes for an interesting combination, in my opinion. So it's worth trying if you like what this sounds like from my review. It's a little tough to describe this fragrance, and there are a lot of moving parts, and it's a fragrance that really changes from the opening to the mid portion of the fragrance and changes again when it dries down, which I like. I really enjoy that about this and a lot of other Amouage fragrances. So that's my take on Figment Woman. Let me know in the comments if you guys have tried this. If this is discontinued, maybe it's a discontinued fragrance. In that case, I apologize, but it is still being sold. So let me know if you've tried it and what you think about this one. As always, thank you so much for watching, your support, and your comments. Until next time, bye guys.